Welcome to the next training video, part of a series of tutorials for the Natural Heritage Data Explorer. Let's have a look at the Natural Heritage Data Explorer, or NHDE for short. The Natural Heritage Data Explorer is an ArcGIS server-based interactive mapping application that provides access to maps and data representing natural heritage resources and other conservation values in Virginia. One of the layers you'll see on NHDE is ConserveVirginia, currently version 3.0. ConserveVirginia is a statewide land conservation strategy and is based on a data-driven process for identifying Virginia's highest priority lands for conservation. 24 map layer inputs identifying the highest priority conservation areas provided by state and federal agencies and conservation organizations are organized into 7 categories. The ConserveVirginia map is a summary of all 7 category inputs and can be used as an initial screening to determine if a potential conservation project qualifies as a ConserveVirginia priority. Staff at DCR Natural Heritage Program have consulted with state and federal resource agencies, conservation organizations, and land trusts to include their top priorities in ConserveVirginia. Here we see the 7 different categories of ConserveVirginia. Let's look at each category in more detail. The Natural Habitat and Ecosystem Diversity category consists of 5 inputs. The Virginia Natural Landscape Assessment identifies large patches of core forests, marshes, dunes, and beaches with at least 100 acres of interior natural habitat. The Outstanding category of C1 cores were used, which rank highest in environmental diversity, species diversity, and water quality benefits and habitats. The Resilient and Connected Landscapes, developed by the Nature Conservancy and its partners, highlights areas that represent climate-resilient sites and areas most likely to accommodate species movement across Virginia. Landscape corridors of natural land cover connecting C1 cores were included to maintain connectivity to allow species movement or range shifts between larger natural land patches, elevations, latitudes, and from ocean to inland. Natural heritage conservation sites are specific areas of the landscape known to contain Virginia's rarest aquatic and terrestrial natural communities and plant and animal species. This dataset includes cave and karst habitats, terrestrial sites, and aquatic systems, and only the top-ranked sites have been included. And brook trout streams identified by the Virginia Department of Wildlife Resources are streams supporting native brook trout and are in a natural state representing high ecological integrity. The Agriculture and Forestry category is comprised of 2 datasets. The Agriculture dataset identifies agricultural lands across Virginia that are threatened by development, as well as provides a spatial dataset that represents the land's agricultural potential. The Agriculture dataset is comprised of data from the American Farmland Trust. This spatial data includes a detailed assessment of the extent, diversity, location, and quality of agricultural land in the United States, as well as the threats to this land from expanding commercial, industrial, and residential development. This category also includes the Department of Forestry's Forest Conservation Values Model, which identifies the highest quality, most productive, and most vulnerable forest land for conservation. The model classifies forest lands based on watershed integrity, size of forested blocks, management potential, connectivity and proximity to other conserved lands, threats of conversion, and diminished tree species and significant forest community attributes. The Cultural and Historic Preservation category includes lands identified by the Department of Historic Resources as unprotected national historic landmarks, Priority 1 Class A battlefield study areas, the most intact and threatened battlefields according to the American Battlefield Protection Program, and areas on or with potential eligibility for the National Register of Historic Places or the Virginia Landmarks Registry. For the Protected Landscapes Resilience category, priority unprotected areas were identified by 6 public resource agencies as lands and waters adjacent to existing conserved lands that are important habitats, critical connections between currently conserved lands, are critical to enhance climate resilience, and that protect key scenic and recreational values. Those agencies are the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, the National Park Service, U.S. Forest Service, the Virginia Department of Wildlife Resources, the Virginia Department of Conservation and Recreation, and the Virginia Department of Forestry. The floodplains and flooding resilience category maps the highest priority lands based on inland flooding and resilience to sea level rise. Riverine flooding is addressed by mapping the undeveloped forest and agricultural lands upstream of the 10 worst flooding disasters across Virginia, based upon risk, dollar losses, and federal disaster declarations, based on data from the Commonwealth of Virginia Hazard Mitigation Plan. Wetlands, as well as streams and floodplains, are included via the ConserveVirginia Virginia Wetlands Catalog. Wetlands include mapped and predicted wetlands, streams, and floodplains. The 2 highest class conservation priorities are included based on variables including water quality, natural land networks and buffers, ecosystem services, and biodiversity. Coastal wetlands, serving as estuaries for marine ecosystems, floodwater retention, and important resources for local economies, are also included. Coastal flooding resilience areas are included via the Coastal Ecological Resiliency Models developed by the Nature Conservancy. Priorities include wetlands identified as above average and far above average resilience, indicating the greatest long-term potential for adaptive response based on a projected rise in sea level of 6 feet. Coastal resilience is also addressed by the Marsh Migration and Marsh Building Model, developed by the Virginia Institute for Marine Science. This model identifies estuarine and freshwater areas that provide the highest ecological services and provide for the highest marsh migration potential to adjacent natural lands. The Scenic Preservation category identifies high-priority unprotected lands by mapping national and state-designated scenic byways, state-designated scenic rivers, all-American roads, as well as national, scenic, historic, millennium, and recreational trails. These mapped resources were buffered by a 200-foot area on either side of the resource to capture high-priority lands in immediate viewsheds. The Water Quality Improvement category includes buffer lands where land conservation will be most effective to maintain and improve water quality via easement restrictions that ensure natural vegetation is maintained. The Water Quality Improvement Opportunity Areas identifies approximately 789,000 acres of the highest priority lands for conservation in the interest of water quality improvement in general. It was developed via collaboration between DCR and the Department of Environmental Quality, using estimates of nitrogen, phosphorus, and sediment loadings from agricultural sources from the Chesapeake Bay Program Phase 6 Watershed Model and the Virginia Water Quality Assessment, and with consideration of the goals of the Chesapeake Bay Watershed Implementation Plan. The aquatic life conservation data identify lands that drain into waters of highest aquatic habitat values as determined by the Department of Environmental Quality using macroinvertebrate monitoring data to assess environmental conditions. The Healthy Waters Conservation data identify lands that drain into streams ranked outstanding or healthy based on fish and macroinvertebrate communities under DCR's Healthy Waters program. The Restoration Candidate Best Management Practices data identify lands where, if agricultural best management practices are used, improvements to water quality would be greatest, according to DCR's Healthy Waters program. Here we see the ConserveVirginia map as displayed in NHDE, which includes all 7 categories. Clicking a polygon using the Identify tool in the ConserveVirginia map reveals the associated attributes. For this example, in this attribute table, we can see that this is a yes for the Floodplains and Flooding Resilience category of ConserveVirginia. Please continue watching for additional information about data and functionality on the Natural Heritage Data Explorer.